hello, and welcome back to another exciting edition of This Time Afternoon Coffee with Stephen. I'm currently down in San Diego at my exquisite hotel room just across the street from the courthouse. We're currently in trial on a case that's been going on since 2019. More about that case next week. This particular blog, though, that I want to talk about is entitled Enemy of the State. And it's instructive, okay? This is a case that we're currently working on, not the case that I'm down here in San Diego about. That's completely unrelated. But this is important for a lot of people to understand. There has been an ongoing theme for many of my clients that have come to me that have said, well, we've got this California roster of handguns, and it's silly, it's arbitrary, it's capricious. It, serves no, legitimate safety concerns or anything like that. But I think I might have found a way to get around the roster. I am a dual resident of two separate states, and I hear that constantly. I'm a dual resident. I've got residency in California, and I've got residency in Arizona, or Nevada, or Montana, or whatever it is. Guys, I want to make sure that it's completely understood that there is no such thing as dual residency. You are domiciled in one location at a time, okay? Now, it is entirely conceivable that you may have obtained identification documents in multiple jurisdictions. There's nothing inherently illegal about that, interestingly enough, okay? But from the standpoint of classification, you can only be domiciled in one state at one time. Now, where this becomes somewhat complex is with the 1968 Gun Control Act. This is a federal law. This has nothing to do with state law. As much as I dislike California's regime as it relates to firearms, I can't really blame them on this one. This one comes directly from Washington, D.C. And effectively, it says that you can only purchase a handgun in the state in which you are currently domiciled. Okay, so if you are domiciled in California, but you happen to purchase a firearm in, let's say, Nevada, that, technically speaking, is a violation of federal law. Now, extraordinarily difficult for the government to be able to prove that you, in fact, were not domiciled in that location at that time, because domicile really takes effect when you, as the individual, believe that you are, in fact, a resident of this particular jurisdiction. Well, they may be able to try to marshal some evidence that you still maintained a California CCW, that you still had a California driver's license, yada, yada, yada. But the fact of the matter is, if your intent was to be domiciled at the time that you made that handgun purchase in that remote jurisdiction, then candidly speaking, they're going to have a difficult time actually overcoming that hurdle. Where it becomes more problematic, though, is when people buy off-roster guns in the other jurisdiction, bring it back into California, and then subsequently sell them. If they simply bring the guns back into California and keep them for their own personal use, really there's not going to be any issue involved here. But people have discovered that because of the artificial sort of market that's developed as a result of the California roster, you can buy off-roster guns in another jurisdiction for true market value, end up selling them in California for sometimes triple the value of what you paid for it just a couple of weeks earlier. And there are individuals that have effectively made some degree of a business in doing this. The problem associated with that is that now ATF looks at that activity as trafficking in firearms without having an FFL. Now, from a personal standpoint, forgetting what the legal argument is, I find this to be incredibly distasteful because the vast majority of the people that do this actually try to engage in legal conduct. What I mean by that is they buy the guns in Nevada, they bring them back with them as their own personal firearms into California, reestablish, if we want to use that legal fiction, California domicile, and then they turn around and they sell these guns, which in and of itself should theoretically be legal. More to the point, they don't sell them out of the back of a truck or something like that. They make arrangements to meet at an FFL and actually engage in the action from a lawful standpoint, with a 10-day waiting period and everything along those lines. Well, apparently ATF feels that this still is construed as trafficking in firearms, even though you are using an FFL to actually engage in the subsequent sale. Now, while this may or may not be legal, and that what I'm essentially articulating is our legal argument in defense of someone who does this, it's ultimately going to be up to a judge or a jury, usually a federal judge or a jury, to make the determination as to whether or not a law has actually been broken. And ATF takes the very, very stringent belief that if you are selling more than a couple of guns that you have not had in your inventory for an extended period of time, then that is in fact either A, trafficking in firearms, or B, commission of perjury, because when you bought the guns and you filled out the 4473 form, you essentially argued or stated under penalty of perjury that the firearm is being purchased for you. Well, we had a client who very recently had gone through and sold a number of off-roster guns. He had a search warrant executed at his home by ATF, and now it appears as though there may be a federal indictment that he's going to have to suffer. And we're going to have to defend him throughout this process, and it's going to be a costly process, I have to be honest with you. So whatever money that he was able to generate by selling these off-roster guns, he's going to ultimately have to turn over in legal defense, notwithstanding the level of anxiety that he's suffering right now as well. So those of you who have contemplated the idea of buying off-roster guns for the purposes of selling them in California, I want you to think of this as a very cautionary tale. In any event, I'll tell you more about the trial down in San Diego next week. Regardless, I want you to train constantly, train consistently, train repetitively, train with purpose. Above all else, stay safe.